Hey there, you're welcome to this week's Tech Tuesdays webinar on deployment best practices of data governance products, Axon, EDC, IDQ, DPM. Today we have with us Srinivasa Gopal, who is an Informatica veteran from the Customer Success Technologies team, handling data governance and privacy, and also developed a niche in cloud data management solutions. Before we start this webinar, here are some housekeeping tips. This webinar is for 1 hour, including the 15 minutes Q&A. You can post your queries in the Q&A box. Dial-in participants are muted for this webinar. The session is being recorded and will be available in the Informatica Support YouTube channel and the Success portal. The recording will be emailed to you as well. You can also put in your feedbacks and suggestions for the session in the post-webinar survey. The Tech Tuesdays webinar program is hosted within the Success portal. The Informatica Success portal is a microlearning platform offering free and unlimited learning to all registered users. This feature-rich platform was launched to help you learn and use Informatica products better. Our newly launched data governance learning path in the Success portal will enable you to implement data-centric approach to compliance based on your role. Here are a few important links that you can go over later that will help you with your product adoption journey with Informatica. Over to you, Srini. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Here is the agenda for today's webinar. We'll go through data governance program building blocks and best practices, platform architecture of Axon, EDC, data quality and data privacy management in on-premise or cloud environment, roles and responsibilities, sizing guideline, question and answers. Look at some of the data governance program building blocks. Here are the key highlights of having the data governance and best practices. We'll go through some of the items in the subsequent slides on organization framework, program charter and guiding principles, critical data element identification process, ongoing maturity assessment, program metrics or KPIs, which is very important in terms of measuring the success of data governance program, and communications. Here is a reference for data governance organization framework, which is agile and flexible, having executive oversight and sponsorship, which aligns with the business strategy. And other aspects of this function is to have authorization of policies and standards, monitors the program metrics, and has communication channel at a continuous mode with all the teams or stakeholders. Data Governance Council closely works with the executive oversight and sponsors, having collaborative business leadership and prioritizing data issues. Apart from that, there are some items that this function handles is to have support of the working teams and enforcing compliance. Working teams on the ground can be as many depending on the size of the organization, having data stewards or analysts, etc., who conduct items like root cause analysis, propose remediation options, drafts the solutions, business glossaries, policies, standards, etc. Here is a 5-stage maturity model having business value on the vertical bar and capabilities on the horizontal. We see it starting with the lowest level as reactive to the repeatable stage and structured and proactive approach of data governance to the embedded approach. Please feel free to reach out to our team to perform an assessment and see where it can be headed in terms of measuring the overall data governance as a practice. Here is a 3-stage approach of building the program: design, pilot, and extend. Design goes with determining the data governance readiness, basically identifying the business drivers, pain points, recurring themes, and maturity assessment. And always goes with the organization framework, having steering committee, council, and stewards, and working teams that we just now went through in the previous slide. And the third step is basically to determine the decision rights of rules of engagement, escalation process, or exception process, going through people, process, technology as a fundamental principle of data governance. The pilot stage plays an important role in generating the first value, having defining the data governance charter, having mission and vision, business value, and guiding principles, identifying the pilot projects wherein it provides the inventory of projects that can be assessed and shown value as with priority, assessing the pilot scope and timeline. The next step is to have assembling of core working teams like data stewards, business and IT SMEs, cross-functional business teams, and data governance leaders engagement. And the extension to this program goes into the launching the data governance program by socializing awareness of participation and goals with the stakeholders, data steward onboarding and support, and baseline metrics for initial projects. The next step is to monitor and define processes. We have to have monitoring goals, issues, and process participation, defining the success metrics, and refining the process accordingly. The expansion of the DG program to overall mature the stage of data governance to publish the DQ results, data governance matrices, business values, and add more working teams to expand the data governance program. Identifying KPIs to measure the success of the program plays a key role in communicating to the sponsors or council members to see the value of the implementation. Here are some examples that can be determined upfront so that it can be measured over a period of time. Regulatory compliance, percentage ability to report compliance within agreed to time periods, reduced number of personnel to respond to compliance audit, percentage decrease in compliance violations. For customer loyalty, it can be revenue growth over year, revenue target to actual for a defined time frame, comparison of sales within and by category, percentage growth business versus old business. There can be more depending on the criteria that you want to monitor as a KPI and measure it over a period of time and track the success of the program. Here's a full list of initial measurements and KPIs. We went through some of the KPIs as an example in the previous slides. Some of them I would like to highlight on the technology aspect is on the data catalog, like number of terms defined, number of terms assigned owners and stewards, how much of lineage that has been achieved. This can be achieved through enabling data asset analytics in EDC, wherein it provides all these matrices on the analytics dashboard. There are other items like in the strategic business drivers, wherein risk management, it can be tracked through ability to comply with CCPA or GDPR privacy regulations, and also monitoring the regulatory compliance like percentage decrease in compliance violations, etc. And in the governance outcome category, the data democratization, there is a way to track this like percentage of time saved through self-service analytics. Improve data quality, like how much of percentage complete, accurate, valid customer contacts. And in terms of metadata documentation, it can be percentage of databases, integrations, and reports being captured. From the people and process perspective, it can be like the number of data stewards being identified, role descriptions defined, and people being assigned ownership to that, the stakeholders accountability. And the process perspective, the change control is defined like processes created with workflows to support the change, policy development of new or existing policies, the number of new or existing policies, Workflow management, the number of workflows created to support communication in processes. Let's look at some of the platform architecture with AWS or Azure as an example. This is a typical data flow with the AWS where we can see on-premise data sources connected to EDC or IDQ for the metadata and data flow respectively, and also having the AWS components connected to it. EDC and IDQ are internally connected to Axon to get the conceptual view established, and the data sets are eventually published to the marketplace as a data collection and eventually subscribed to the end users to deliver to the appropriate targets. The other consumption pattern is basically to have the data integration tool source the data from on-premise to the cloud and then prep the data to corresponding warehouse Redshift here or Athena actually. Similar data flow can be seen with Microsoft Azure environment having the reporting with Power BI or SQL data warehouse here, but however the onboarding procedures to EDC or IDQ and eventually to Axon for the governance framework to be established or the publishing part of the marketplace still remains the same. This is an infra data governance platform architecture having IDQ, EDC, DPM, and Axon being deployed in Microsoft Azure as an infrastructure as a service. You can see these products in the marketplace offerings as well with the reference architecture. The resource links provides you the corresponding marketplace offerings towards the end of this deck actually. The database repository is managed one instance per component, and it can be Oracle, SQL Server, DB2. The EDC cluster repository having the storage and compute and search services. This is actually changing in 10.5 with a non-Hadoop cluster environment. Axon comes with a external database of PostgreSQL, or it can be standalone installed within the installation service itself. The client is here the developer, which is a thick client that can be on the Windows box connecting to IDQ or EDC environments actually like with different context. Developer tool is connected to IDQ in terms of building data quality rules or scorecards or profiles or mappings, etc. Whereas in case of EDC, it is connected to build the data domain rules for data domain discovery. Similar components can be seen in AWS ecosystem having EC2 instances. And the on-premise world, the PMs are procured to install the respective components as per the PAM compliance and compatibility checklist being done. The recommendation and best practice for EDC and IDQ are to be installed in a separate domain. Here are some pointers. It allows you to have the flexibility of applying patches, fixes, or upgrades for respective products. IDQ is usually the higher volume, especially having the long-running jobs with batch or real-time web services. EDC is more metadata-driven, more jobs and less operational-driven. IDQ is licensed based on number of cores in the machine, whereas EDC is licensed based on number of resources. The profiling context here is on the EDC side, it will be more on data domain discovery, similarity discovery, unique key inference, clear features, value frequencies. However, context of profiling on IDQ is to perform checks on data quality rules, scorecards, and on key sets of data only. However, in EDC, we usually do for a larger set of data sets. This is an Informatica data quality architecture having the components of model repository, which stores all the metadata, and the data integration service connecting to the profile of a warehouse plays a key role in profiling the stats and providing you the value frequencies and etc. The content management service interacts with the reference database, having the reference tables or other reference data that has been created as part of the rules that has been built. And the developer is a thick client that interacts with the model repository and other components here, basically to have the IDE for the developers. Analyst is a thin client, is used by mostly by the data analysts and stewards for building the respective data quality services. So this is all under the Informatica Services platform, which can be controlled by the administrator or created and maintained by the administrator. And the Power Center services basically having the DI side of things, where it can build the mappings and workflows and metadata manager services as well. Data engineering quality is very similar to the IDQ component, where however there is an additional functionality where it can be used as a push down to Spark or Blaze or Databricks. Some of the use cases here is especially on the data lake scenarios, where ingestion and management of the lake data and its quality of the lake is useful for generating trust on the data. Data preparation is another self-service way of building the data quality rules directly on the data lake. Data cataloging for building the custom domain discovery and streaming set of use cases. Data engineering quality architecture, we can see this is overall EDC architecture. However, the components highlighted here on the right hand side looks very familiar with the IDQ architecture, except that it will have the push down to Spark and Blaze and Databricks as a profiling push down engine to leverage the distributed capability of the Hadoop ecosystem. There is a integration aspect of Axon, EDC, and data quality. EDC and Axon are connected through REST APIs for the exchange of metadata information, whereas Axon and data IDQ is connected through an Axon agent, which also has a data quality generation source, which is useful for generating the metrics and visualizing data quality analytics. It stores the metrics into the metrics repository over here. There's a cross product way of all the 4 products, and Axon, IDQ, EDC, and data privacy management. They all integrate to each other for respective set of use cases. EDC and Axon is primarily to link the business and technical metadata, whereas Axon and data privacy management is to read the privacy information and provide the privacy dashboard at a policy level or process level, etc. And in case of data quality, it's as we saw in the previous slide, like to link the data quality rules and to generate clear-based data quality automation. EDC and data privacy management are closely tied to each other, where there is a sharing of technical metadata. Here's an example of how the application relationships works between Axon, EDC, IDQ, and data privacy management. The glossary component of the Axon is defined for the critical data elements, having the terms and definitions, which are then imported into EDC to tag to the respective technical metadata. The resources are basically configured to the respective source systems here, vendor master, material master, and SAP PO, which are then logically connected to the systems, which is a logical layer, giving the logical to physical view. The data sets and attributes here are connected to the respective EDC tables that has been scanned as part of the physical resource scan here. The IDQ business rules or scorecards or profile results which are built on the product table are linked to the business rules here, which provides a data quality dashboard or business rules results in the Axon layer here. And basically the DPM data stores are imported from EDC. It's a bidirectional. So basically if you're scanning EDC and also want to import into the data privacy management, that can be done. Or if the data stores are being scanned in data privacy management, that can be synced up with EDC as well. Hence, it's bidirectional. And important point to note here is that's why EDC and DPM to be installed in the same domain so that this can be achieved. So the data classification policy defined in data privacy management can be linked to the Axon policies to view all the sensitive data and provide the data privacy dashboard and see the process overlay as well if there is a process being interlinked with the resource. Let's move to users and roles and security management. There are multiple ways to onboard users into the Informatica platform. It can be native within the Informatica platform itself, or with the LDAP integration or single sign-on SAML way of accessing. You can configure an Informatica domain to enable users imported from an LDAP directory service to log into Informatica nodes, services, and application clients. Similarly, Axon can connect to LDAP directory in your organization, retrieve users, assign them to user profiles, and display them in the Axon interface. Some of the certified LDAP providers are Microsoft Azure, Active Directory, OpenLDAP, etc. Refer to PAM for compatibility on the version that you're trying to configure for user onboarding. You can also configure SAML with the Informatica domain or with the Axon installation. Some of the certified identity providers are ADFS in case of Informatica platform. In case of Axon, Okta on login, Azure Active Directory are certified. However, Axon does support with all vendors supporting SAML version 2. You can check with PAM for compatibility on the version that you're trying to onboard users. Here are the typical roles for Axon user engagement, the knowledge, stewardship, and authoritative roles. With the subject matter expert on the knowledge-based role has deep understanding of the context in which the data asset operates. Stewards having an advocate of good data governance practices and coordinator of the data knowledge, improvement and alignment efforts, whereas the owner is responsible for the accuracy of the information being captured in the governance catalog. So some of the roles could apply to many of the Axon facets like Axon glossary, system, processes, data quality, etc. These are key metrics that many of the users request for knowing, like what is the free access and license bearing Axon for the users. This might answer to those set of questions. You can see there can be a non-logged in users who can view the public assets that is for read only. And there is a web user section where it can be logged in view only users, or it can be an editor user. So the viewer only users can basically act as a collection owner or managing content, review and approve the access requests. Whereas the admin and super admin, of course, having the higher privileges of managing the overall segments in case of data marketplace, or managing logs across all the facets of objects and users, etc. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions on managing the roles in Axon. Admin versus super admin. Super admins can in Axon configure the application, create the roles, set role permissions, create default workflows, or change drop-down values, or make any other change possible via the admin panel. Administrators, on the other hand, have full edit rights across objects, but will not change the application itself. Therefore, may want to one for each business area or department involved. Here are some of the roles and responsibilities on the EDC side, where where the catalog administrator is responsible for implementing the requirements defined by the data catalog owner, basically configuring and scheduling the resources in the catalog administrator to ingest the metadata or configure the automatic glossary association, data profiling, or data domain discovery. Configuring the users and user groups that we just now saw, like with ways of onboarding the users into the Informatica platform. Whereas data steward and a subject matter expert responsible for curating of the data catalog with business contextual information. And the catalog user basically responsible for increasing the business value of the data catalog with their feedback and data knowledge. There are some of the permissions in EDC after the cataloging scan is being completed. It can be read and write, or metadata and data read when the profiling is being enabled. All permissions, of course, inclusive of all the other permissions being provided. Data governance administrator role, in general, having the understanding of the needs of the enterprise governance from a business perspective and being an expert user of Axon and managing all the user accounts with the super user privileges of the Axon content, and helps to manage on day-to-day issues with controlling the look and feel and config of the tool. Here comes the process part of considering the metadata lifecycle implementation, wherein we usually get questions on how it is the process of onboarding and when do we need to say that it is completely onboarded for the end users to consume. So this can be customized to a particular organization. It starts with ingestion phase where the metadata is being ingested. It goes through a matrix of who is responsible, accountable with a RACI matrix, and goes through profiling, classifying, annotation, consumption, and governance aspect of stages. And this can be, again, customized to the organization-specific needs. However, this provides you the process of onboarding into the platform and then publishing it to the end users. Let's move on to sizing guideline. Here is a template that can be used for capacity planning of Informatica data quality. There can be various types of sizing here, like with minimum of single node, with 4 nodes, 4 cores, and 20 GB memory. And small, medium, and large and extra large goes with higher resource requirements. It depends on the number of users using the profile usage and cleansing and validation usage and matching, and determines the type of deployment that can be chosen. I'll run through one of the example here from a small type of deployment, which considers 4 nodes and 16 cores and 64 GB memory. Here the average number of users, concurrent users, are 60, whereas data profiling concurrent profiles around 8, having average 100 columns with 10 million rows. Data cleansing and validation, there are some of the examples of high intensity are like address validation with 16 million rows per hour throughput, and medium intensity are like some parsing or standardization transformations being used with 40 million rows per hour, and some of the lower intensity jobs taking 100 millions per hour. The matching use cases having 28 million rows per hour. So this can be a small sized deployment. So depending on the need, please feel free to plan the sizing accordingly. And one more important point to note is this is applicable for non-IDQ variants where native engine being is used on the data integration service. For example, in EDC, if you are trying to run profiling on a native engine, this is still applicable. There's a EDC sizing guideline having the small, medium, and large type of size deployments depending on the number of concurrent users or the number of metadata resources you're planning to um, deploy. Yeah, this can be considered as a sizing guideline for which deployment to be useful. It has infrastructure core components plus the metadata processing component of which is the catalog service, and then the cluster which has the storage and compute and search engine services involved. The DPM sizing guideline is attached to the appendix. Here is a key resources slide which has all the detailed steps involved in configuring the access between Axon IDQ, EDC, and DPM, automatic onboarding, sizing guidelines, integrated monitoring for capacity planning, PAM, and marketplace offerings. And that can be very useful. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions. Let's look into PAM on some of the compatibility questions that we usually get. You can navigate to Informatica Network portal, and the resources you should see the PAM listed over there. Let's look into this PAM for Informatica Platform 10.4.1, which has EDC, data quality, data privacy management, products listed. You can see the home screen where you can have the quick links over here, having the appropriate products like Power Center, data quality, or data engineering integration, or streaming, or enterprise data catalog, EDP, data preparation, or data privacy management connectivity, interoperability, and other products as well. Let's focus on the data governance stack, especially on the EDC here. Go to EDC, you'll see the corresponding operating systems that are supported with version numbers, and the corresponding Hadoop distribution version is supported for the Hadoop cluster. And data asset analytics needs a repository. Notice the version numbers that are supported and plan for the deployment accordingly. For the advanced scanners as well, it needs a repository that has this corresponding versions only. So now let's look into the EDC data sources that are compatible with the scanners that are being used for extracting the metadata. The profiling is available in the profiling data sources sheet. I will go there in a moment. These are some of the databases that are supported with the object metadata that is being extracted. Here are some of the Hadoop source systems like Hive or HDFS with the corresponding Hadoop distribution platforms listed over here, and they're supported authentication mechanisms and connectivity methods, whether it's SSL or TLS enabled. As we saw in the architecture, there can be a remote scanner that can be leveraged as well. So you can see that what source systems have the remote scanners that can be leveraged. Data provisioning on the live data for source and target, it's an optional feature where you can integrate EDC with the ISCS CDI. If you have CDI license as well, that can be integrated, and this feature can be leveraged. So there are other source systems that has similar methods being mentioned as well. And here are some of the BI platforms that are supported with version numbers and corresponding object metadata with the lineage extraction results as well. Here are some of the ETL tools that are listed, especially on the platform side, which is basically the DEI or DEQ, which has the mappings listed that can be imported, and we can see the lineage until detailed lineage as well from these version numbers. And Informatica Cloud is basically the IACS scanner, which is, currently supports only the CDI, Cloud Data Integration Module, having the lineage being listed from summary level to util level or control level lineage as well. Power Center is a DI tool that, of course, being supported with all these versions listed over here. MDM can be seen as a lineage too, from 10.4 compatibility, etc. So similarly, you can see for each version of product being released, you can plan the scanner and its usage accordingly, and plan for the deployments. Here are some of the file systems that are supported. Please note that there are some scripting technologies listed here. This is actually the tech preview. However, in advanced scanner, you can see there are a full breadth of functionalities for those scripting-based technologies with much more detailed and control level lineage. SSIS and data stage are the additional ETL tools supported, and more in the roadmap as well, according to the product management team. So the crux of the story is basically to plan for the usage of the scanners based on the supported mechanisms, and plan for the deployment accordingly. Similarly, you can see the data privacy management stack as well, like having the corresponding supportability to closely work with the EDC as we saw in the architecture. Profiling data sources as well, like where you can see the source systems that are supported, and how it is being used from a profiling execution engine perspective. Always Spark is the preferred engine, provides you the better results if you have the Hadoop cluster pushed on enabled. EDC profiling and sampling enablement, which is a best practice when you're trying to profile large volume of data. Sampling is always preferred. There's a DPM connectivity sheet which provides you the compatibility from sensitive data tracking perspective, and for your security and privacy use cases. The authentication tab lists down all the identity providers that are supported, and also the version numbers with additional notes. Please plan the user onboarding appropriately based on this supported components actually. Let's look into the Axon side of PAM things, and see the metrics similar to what we saw for the Informatica platform. Let's use this latest version of PAM for Axon 7.1. You can see similarly to what we saw in the Informatica platform, the operating systems are listed and the versions that are supported and certified, along with the web browsers that can be used to load the application. Here are the SSO identity providers that are certified, and LDAP providers for the user onboarding. Very key tab where we start integrating the products together with the Axon, having data quality, enterprise data catalog, and data privacy management. There are the versions that are supported. Currently, it supports one data quality engine for Axon, which can be IDQ or DEQ. Remember, DEQ is a variant of DQ where it can have the push down to a Spark or Blazor Databricks engines as well. That brings us to the end of the demo. The appendix slides has much more details on data privacy management, sizing, and as well as additional content for Axon. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. Please post your questions in the Q&A box. We'll try and answer them.
Okay, thanks, Vrinda. So maybe I'll go through a few questions here, which are shortlisted. I think there's a question on whether the products can be installed on Google environment too. The answer is yes. So you can install Axon or EDC or any product stack on Google, since it's being infrastructure as a service. Just ensure that the compatibility is checked in PAM that was shown towards the end of the webinar. So yeah, to ensure like all the compatibility checks are being taken care. There's a question from Hafiz. Any recommendation for Axon architecture, number of servers and number of any environments for Axon and EDC as well as DQ? Axon compared to EDC and DQ is lightweight. So Axon, all the products needs a different, definitely a different servers so that it performs well in an optimized manner. And it's going back to the PAM question again, like we ensure the compatibility is there with the required memory and CPU and those kind of things taken care with the sizing for all these products. We usually see Axon and EDC being deployed in 2 environments, but depending on the context or usage, usually it goes to either 2 or 3. So Axon and EDC being typically 2, and DQ usually we see 3 environments. So so depending on the context, the number of environments can be planned accordingly. Right? Pick any other question here. So there's one more interesting question here from Hafiz again. So for the implementation, we have IDQ, EDC, and MDM. Which one to start? So this is like common question that we get. So before getting into the technology aspect, we usually ask for the, as you see in the beginning of the section, to have a program development and design being done and identify the pilots to determine what is the best business outcome that business users are looking for. So based on that, the product stack can be selected. And if in that case, like if the KPI, for example, is to improve your customer 360 experience is the highest thing that business is looking for, then of course MDM will be the first choice to start, and then you can go into data governance if those KPIs can be achieved. So it is all driven through the business and the appropriate KPIs to measure the success. There is one more question on can we connect data lake with IDQ or EDC? Yes, the connectivity can be done to the data lakes with the IDQ or EDC. Now, EDC, as we saw in the deployment architecture, so it provides you the push-down capabilities as well. Now, if you saw the architecture of IDQ, it doesn't have a Spark push-down, especially in data lake scenarios, right? So DQ would be the right choice if you are planning for a large volume connectivity and push-down to Spark and everything. So from the Hadoop and data lake perspective. Avanish, do you want to pick any?
Yes, Srini, thanks.
Yeah.
So there's one question which is about from a person that they're new to data governance tool and they're familiar with PC, DQ, TDM, and how does EDC, Axon, and DPM, how that integrates with the tool solution. So Axon is a separate installer, but EDC and DPM, they are the application services within the broader Informatica platform. So EDC and DPM, as Srini might have shown in the slides as well, they can be within the same domain. And there are many touch points, but for EDC, what we need to understand is it is the enterprise metadata catalog. It brings metadata from Informatica tools like Power Center and data quality for lineage purpose. It brings metadata from your data lake, data warehouses, cloud systems, API-based sources, and everything. So EDC would connect to many things like Srini mentioned. Axon would be a separate installation. However, it connects with EDC, DPM, IDQ, all these three to give you a multifaceted view of your data governance. So that's the answer. I mean, you can install EDC and DPM together, but Axon would be separate. And Power Center is not a must, but if you have it, it certainly gives you the insights of the detailed lineage of your ETL tool within EDC. And I'm just trying to find some other questions. We have asked, what is the roadmap for EDC and Axon, and Axon support for CDQ. So Axon support for CDQ is under review. I mean, the internal R&D team and product managers, I think they're working on it. We do not have a fixed date on it, so I guess maybe you will hear from us soon. But right now, it is on the roadmap, and we don't have a date at least. And is there any integration between Axon Marketplace and ServiceNow? Starting 7.1, I think the integration between Marketplace and ServiceNow is provided. I don't know which version you're using right now, but yeah, we are providing the Marketplace and ServiceNow integration now in our latest version.
Yeah, there is one more question on EDC connecting to IICS repository to create lineage. I would like to highlight, this is from Sanchit Sharma. So Sanchit, yes, you can connect to IICS repository to create lineage. Currently, it's supporting cloud data integration only, right? So CDI. Anything that is apart from that module, then it needs a custom scanner to be built. Hope it answers your question. There is one more question from Joke. Lens, is it considered out of the box to use a combination of Axon and EDC for data classification purposes in production and acceptance environments? Yeah, so yeah, I mean, you can use data classification rules from different environments. As we initially pointed out, like the number of environments is depending on the context and usage. Usually we see two environments, like production being heavily used since Axon and EDC is all metadata driven, and data classification. So subprod is usually used for testing of new releases or patches, but however, you can definitely try to execute the data classification in subprod environments to get the acceptance, and then try that in production as well. So.
Yeah, there's a question I say, do we need to create separate databases for EDC repositories, or create one database and have the repositories in separate schemas? So the latter is possible. You can have one repository and separate schemas for one database and separate schemas for each of the repository which is needed. What you need to make sure is that there is enough horsepower on the database to cater to the requests from all these different application services. It doesn't matter if it is one database, multiple schema, or multiple databases. There is a question, will Axon only support Postgres database or the relational database as well? So Axon, yeah, I mean, Axon right now for the internal repository for all the metadata which you create in Axon, all of that goes into only the underlying Postgres database. Yeah, earlier it was bundled only, but now it is bundled with the product, and you have an option to have your own Postgres database, which should be in the supported range. And right now, I think the database which we support for storing all the metadata is only Postgres. And just to reiterate, this is the database where we store data. Axon technically do not connect to any database or data lake to bring data directly from it. It's only the Postgres database is only used to store the metadata which you create in Axon. Axon can connect to any database through EDC, because if you have EDC connecting to your system, then that metadata could be fetched to Axon via EDC. I think there's a question on can you please share some information on IICS and CDQ integration with EDC and Axon? So IICS can be integrated with EDC. You can ingest the lineage metadata, as Srini just mentioned, into EDC And you can also connect EDC and Axon together to get the data provisioning in EDC. That is kind of a behind-the-scene integration between EDC and IICS, where users can view the data in EDC by calling an IICS mapping behind the scene. There is another integration to increase the developer productivity between IICS and EDC. So many touch points between IICS and EDC. However, CDQ and Axon, which I answered already, that should be on the roadmap. We don't have a date yet, but yeah, it should come around sometime.
There is one more question. Is DPM a separate software than EDC? So overall, it's part of the Informatica platform, and DPM is an additional service that apart from EDC, you need to install, and it's a separate license too. So the best practice is to have DPM and EDC, as we mentioned in the slide, to have in the same domain so that you can plan the deployment accordingly.
Yeah. Yes. Starting 10.4.1, we just have one installer. So there are not two different installers for DPM and EDC, but yeah, people choose to install what they want because installer gives you the options. But as Srini mentioned, having them both in the same domain gives you certain edge in doing the privacy analysis. There is a question, could you give us the PAM site so we can download those files? So the PAM is actually available on the network.informatica.com, kind of a one-stop shop for all the videos, and this video will also go there. You can go to knowledge base and search for all the PAMs, and you can download it from there. PAMs Informatica does update them, so you can continuously go and download them, and we do update our PAM as and when we support new data sources. So I would recommend going to network.informatica.com, create a login for yourself, and then access all this information over there.
So there is one more question. Are there plans to improve the BI tools capabilities in Axon, DQ, or Analyst? We'd like to know more on this. If you can reach out so that we can understand more on this use case, on what specific capabilities that you're looking for, and which will be helpful. But however, Axon or Axon provides, especially the APIs. You can always extract through APIs and build your own reports as well. Yeah, we'd like to know more on that. Is business glossary tool is mandatory for data governance? It plays a pivotal role. Usually we see the data part of things like systems, glossaries, business glossaries, and data sets, attributes being the core data side of things. So definitely plays a major role. Being part of the metadata, understanding the definitions and descriptions of what data means is the key. So it plays a major role with taxonomies.
There is a question that EDC has data security management. What is different in DPM? So EDC does data discovery. Using EDC, when you scan your metadata or data, you can tag the data domains, and they could be a PII data domain or PHI data domain. But what DPM does is, like, DPM is much more customized just for risk analysis. It only you can create classification policies, you can add risk score, like what data is protected, what is not. Based on that, DPM can provide you a risk score. And DPM also does some policy creation, security policy violations, and things like that can also be reported. So DPM is much more, custom suited for just data security. There is many other components in DPM like subject registry, user activity, which is all, an extension of DPM's discovery of risk analytics. But yeah, to say the least, EDC can do the data domain tagging and everything, and it can show you what data exists possibly in a table or in a resource. But DPM does provide you a risk score, and takes many other things into consideration while providing a risk for a data store. And it also, is scope for what are the mitigation plan you have in place to call that data safe. And DPM does use ADC's discovery results to, provide risk analytics. So that's where you can benefit from what you've done in EDC into DPM. There is another video which was done on DPM and EDC working together. So I would recommend going through that as well.
There is one more question on how can I see my glossary for a particular project. I see only glossary for the whole form. I'm interested only in my project. How can I do that? I believe you can relate the project to the glossary elements. If you have already done, then the uniform search should automatically show only the relevant glossary items. So I look into the relationships and see if that can be used as part of that. Yeah, you can always reach out to us through CSM, so we can further deep dive on that.
There's a question from Udit. Can we tag glossary terms in a bulk fashion from Axon to tag the assets inside EDC? So yeah, inside EDC, I mean, if you want to do a tagging of assets with a glossary term, you can do a bulk resource import and export, and that would do a bulk association of EDC assets into with glossary terms in Axon. For that, the precondition are that Axon should be scanned in EDC already, and those glossary terms from Axon should exist in EDC so that you can do that association. There's another question, is there any way to get the data source changes tracked at attribute level changes in EDC to generate reports for users? So tracking data source changes is an option which you can enable while scanning the resource, and it would report from one scan to another, whatever is changed, if a table is dropped, if a column is added, all that information will be shown when you enable the track data source changes. There is another way for users in the catalog to follow certain resource or certain asset in EDC if that is changed. But yeah, for the changes underlying underneath the data source, data system like database or something, you should use track data source changes option while scanning.
There's one more question from Ajay Mathur. Can I download my business glossary in Excel like the bulk upload file in Axon? Yes, you can. Yeah. In fact, you can download what you have already uploaded in your my job section. Yeah. There is another question from Petra on how many companies are currently successfully using the EDC Axon integration. Currently, we don't have that insight on how many. However, I would like to highlight here. There's a best practice that you onboard only the business relevant items to Axon and use the data onboarding rules, especially in Axon version 7.1, so that you don't overwhelm physical attributes and sources into Axon a lot. So that's a best practice. So try to use the CDs or key elements to onboard into EDC to Axon. Hope that helps. How do we extract as a report to the users? This is from Srinivas. I hope this is an Axon question. If it's an Axon question, yes, you can use, there are multiple ways you can use Axon APIs, or you can use Axon Power Queries on Excel to report, extract as a report. If it's a EDC based question, in 10.4.1, you'll have data asset analytics feature where you have the analytics report inbuilt into the product itself. So that should help on the reporting mechanism. Or if you want to extract out into a third-party tool as well, you can extract it from the DIA repository underneath. So that can be pulled down also. So depending on the product that you're asking, Srinivas. So there is another question from Olga, how to integrate MDM Informatica to IDQ, Axon, and EDC, and avoid having same data in different products. I mean IDQ, MDM, etc. So you can, there are, from a lineage perspective, so depending on the context, you can integrate. So EDC has a integration with MDM where you can see the lineage, right? And IDQ, actually, it's basically used for loading to MDM from a quality perspective. So those rules can be integrated with Axon. So definitely there's no need of replication here in terms of metadata or data. So these can be integrated from the context-based thing. So, so EDC can be used to scan the metadata, what you have it on MDM, and see the lineage. And Axon helps you to govern the whole system by integrating with data quality here, right? So there's no replication as such, but if you still have questions, please feel free to reach out, Olga. So this is an interesting question from Sharad. Why don't you have MDM as part of this DG products? Informatica has 3 journeys: data governance and privacy, and customer 360 is like on the MDM side, and IACS like cloud journey. Although these products can integrate across, this is a journey that has been highlighted from the usage and context of the usage as well. But these journeys do talk to each other from an integration perspective.
Another question from Petra. I don't know if it is answered. Srini, how many companies are currently using the EDC Axon integration?
Yeah. I think go ahead.
You have done that? Okay. No, that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the count, but most of the customers, wherever I have been to, EDC and Axon, if it is there, they are certainly integrated. And I would say 98 out of 100 times, they both are there together. So because, like Axon is your business-facing content creation tool where you can create glossaries, projects, data sets, policies, link them all together. And it is more custom suited for business people, not very technical users. But EDC is your enterprise catalog. So when you create that content into Axon, and if you want to dive deeper into where that data technically exists, which governs the CCPA regulation or a GDPR regulation or a certain glossary, for that integration, you have to link EDC and Axon, and that sort of transition from business to technical only becomes possible when you connect these two tools together. And that's the edge, which Informatica, EDC and Axon provides together through the EDC's vast connectivity and Axon's multifaceted approach. So, yep, we do see it. I mean, I don't have the count, but I believe I know like tens and tens of customers where I have been to where this is being used together.
So there is a question from Shiva in Apu. What is usually time frame for deployment? So it varies depending on like the installation and deployment planning sizing, right? So it definitely varies. You can, especially on the cloud, you have marketplace offerings where it's automated enough to deploy automatically. The integration of aspect also has to be planned. So definitely it varies. I don't have the exact time frame, but yeah, we can.
There's a question on Axon DQ integration is happening through JDBC option. Is there any plan to replace this to use the native connections? So Axon DQ integration, as in like it happens through the Axon agent, the true integration between the two tools. And Axon can connect to DQ and it can bring the existing profiles, rules, or scorecards matrix into Axon. But I believe from JDBC, you mean that when automated rules are created, they are by default getting through JDBC connection objects. So for that, using JDBC makes it more generic because people may have, different kind of client tools. And it's not necessary that you have all the clients installed on your Informatica IDQ side. But having JDBC connector pretty much, makes it, I believe that's my understanding that why it is that way, that, having JDBC lets you create those connections and the drivers are there on the servers, so the data could be brought in. So that's why it is like that. If there is a plan to replace this through native connection, we can check on that, but I am not aware if we are replacing those connection creation through from JDBC to native connectors. I think it has its own dependencies, and that's why we chose the other way.
There is a follow-up question from Udit Pandya to can this action be initiated from Axon UI?
Yeah, actually, this is on the same lines where the question where he asked that can we do a bulk association of EDC assets to Axon? Can we do the same in Axon? So like do a bulk association of Axon attributes to EDC physical attributes. I believe this is possible. You have to associate the systems to resources, and then you can do that. But yeah, you have to go to the bulk upload template and go for the bulk upload template for relationships, and attribute to physical should there be a template, and that you can use to upload. Axon EDC integration, system to resource linking is mandatory for that though. But yeah, please check. I mean, it may depend on your Axon version as well. I think a follow-up from Srinivas is that data source changes from EDC, can these be extracted as a report to Excel or else? The changes, I mean, in EDC UI, I believe you may be able to export it, but I don't know if in the REST API we have some capabilities to extract it or not. So that will be something worth checking on the REST API side, if this can be programmatically done.
Yeah, I think there is one more unanswered question from Anand. I think this is like a detailed question. If you mask data using TDM or DDM and unauthorized user created data analytics dashboard using data visualization, so is the dashboard proceed with masked data to correct data in authorized person when he or she in the dashboard from the system? I think, yeah, this maybe could be better to take it as a separate conversation, as I think it's a scenario-based question. So Anand, if you can reach out to CSM, so it would be great if we can have a separate call on this.
Yeah, thank you, Srini. Thank you, Avanish. I guess we have answered most of the questions. Still, there are a few that are left to answer. We will definitely get back to you after this session. Thank you, Srini, for the great session. Thank you, Avanish, for chipping in during the Q&A. Thanks, everyone, for joining. You'll find the recording in the Informatica Support YouTube channel and the Success Portal. Please spend some time for the feedback as well. Thanks a lot. See you on our next Tuesday. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.